Well, we're going to look ahead to the Thursday of the Cheltenham Festival now, and all the action will kick off at 1:30 with the Turners Novices Chase. What a belter this could be, potentially with Bob Ollinger, Galloping Deschamps, Long Press, all in the shake-up here. Could be something to really look forward to. Again, like a lot of these races in the anti-post build-up, bit of will he, won't he, who will go where. A bit of cat and mouse, Danny, I think it's fair to say. But Galloping Deschamps against Bob Ollinger, those two do line up. That really is a race to savour.
Yeah, it definitely is. Galloping Deschamps, he's been very good in what he's achieved so far. The only thing I'd have to say, hasn't been really pressed so far. He's done everything at his ease. It'll be interesting to see what happens once he comes under real pressure. You'd hope that he'd come through that test, but it remains to be seen if he will. Bob Ollinger and Long Press will definitely make him think about it here. I think Bob Ollinger is possibly the best horse in the race, but his jumping for me just isn't fantastic over a fence. He was good in Gorn until we quickened up a lot down over the last three, and he landed quite steep at a few of those. Then the next day in Punchestown, Rachel nursed him around, and a good few of the fences that day were taken out with the sun in the back straight as well. So I think Bob Ollinger's jumping just needs to sharpen. While he's probably got the biggest engine, I think his jumping could be his Achilles heel here. And for that reason, if there's going to be one to beat Galloping Deschamps, I think it could be Venetia Williams' horse.
Yeah, interesting. What you were going to say? Galloping Deschamps hasn't been pressed yet. Well, a long press would be just the horse to do that because Danny, he'll go from the front. He'll make this a test. There'll be no hiding place here. I think we're all in agreement. And this is a horse who perhaps is a little bit underrated in the market, in my view.
Yeah, I'd say he definitely is. The fact that they think the Irish horses are untouchable, it's probably making him a slightly bigger price and maybe a bit better value. And I don't think he'll beat Galloping Deschamps, but there's definitely a lot more value there. That win in the Scilly Isles last day was decent. Good performance at New Year's Day in Cheltenham to win going away that day as well. So definitely a horse with a lot of potential.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Vincent, we touch upon Bob Ollinger. Now, there's a little bit of the vibes of perhaps Envoy Allen from last year. A horse who'd had three. We knew was a brilliant novice hurdler. Had three starts over fences. It 1-4, 1-6, 1-8. Barely had to come out first gear to win them, and it was just that novice inexperience. And he came a cropper on the day at the Cheltenham Festival. Obviously, Bob Ollinger, in terms of chasing experience, you'd argue, I suppose Galloping Deschamps you could argue as well, but for a horse who doesn't, as Danny says, he doesn't wow you in the jumping department, is there a worry he is light on experience in that side of things coming into this race?
Yeah, somewhat there is, but having said that, he's trained by Henry de Bromhead, who is the best trainer of horses to jump fences that I've ever seen, and they jump better than anyone else's generally. So you'd like to think he's had two goals so far over fences. The first day in Gordon Park, the only mistakes, he jumped beautifully all the way around. The only mistakes were a slight mistake at the third last, slight mistake at the last. And I'm sure Danny would tell you, those three fences in the straight in Gordon are tricky fences. You're hitting the first of them downhill, I think, turning in. And then, of course, the last fence is always going to be an issue for any horse in a race, generally, because they're getting tired at that stage. I didn't think there was much wrong there. I just wanted to see him do it all cleanly the next day. And then that was a bit of a non-event somewhat with Capodanno and Punchestown because of the sun, that we lost three or four fences down the back. That's not a good thing. For a novice, particularly on the second start, you wanted to see him jump as many fences as possible and jump them as well as he could. Having said that, I've no doubt he can jump and he will jump well. He was brilliant over hurdles in Cheltenham last year. He was one of the real stars of the show last year at Cheltenham. Having said that, the de Bromhead horses were absolutely on fire at that stage. So they're not quite on fire now. You'd like to think they're going to come back and do their best in 2 weeks' time. But there's a slight question mark around that. Galloping Deschamps, on the other hand, he's looked absolutely exceptional over fences. His hurdle win, he won here last year at the festival as well over hurdles. So he's got festival form. He was most impressive on his two chase starts. He looks a real talent. Coming back in trip shouldn't be much of a problem from him here. He's only slightly back in trip anyway if he goes for this Turners, which Willie Mullins is now indicating he will. and it's very hard to split the pair of them. I suppose if I had to come down one side of the fence, I'd come down Galloping Deschamps personally.
Right, interesting stuff here. I was going to come to you then, Stephen. As we see that graphic, how do you kind of split the big three, if you like? And I mean, outside of the, we're talking about 3 horses here, essentially. It's not a 3-horse race. Is there a lurker in the pack we should perhaps be looking out for?
I don't think there is, to be honest. I think it is 3 runners. I hope the front 2 turn up. It's a brilliant battle. I think Bob Ollinger's got the best race makeup here, because Lompress is definitely a front runner. And I think Galloping Deschamps is as well, really. Maybe wouldn't have to, but has done twice over fences so far. Quite a keen going horse. If they didn't lead it, it might not settle, perhaps. So I thought Bob Ollinger was a standout contender. He's been winning when Henry de Bromhead hasn't, which is a big positive. Soft ground will really suit him. One negative, perhaps, for Lompress has been beating the same horses when you read back through his form. A very, very good jumper. Wants to go left-handed. I think he'll be better left-handed, as he showed when winning at Cheltenham. He did go that way a little bit when winning at Sandown. The negative for Lompress is stable form. Venetia's got a well-documented bug in the yard. That's not ideal 2 weeks before Cheltenham. Now, she has had a winner at Doncaster today when we're doing the recording, but that's her first in 23 runners. And they've not been big prices. There's been a lot of horses running absolutely diabolical. So the fact she's got a bug in the yard, the horse is shortened right up Lompress as well, obviously with doubts about one of the front 2 running in the race. I thought Bob Ollinger was probably an absolute certainty. Now Galloping Deschamps looks like he's going to run. He obviously isn't. He's going to be a much bigger price, but I think he's the one to decide. But Henry de Bromhead has had 3 winners in the last fortnight. I don't think he's too worried. I think they're coming right at the right time.
Yeah, still, we're still waiting to see who does line up officially here, but yeah, it will be a wonderful spectacle. Just a horse I want to just flag up here for you, Danny. If he did line up, he'd carry my 5p each way. That is Jungle Boogie, a horse who absolutely bolted up on his chase debut, really imposing sort. I mean, I listening to Willie Mullins' comments, says he's incredibly talented, but also incredibly fragile. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, Jungle Boogie, a horse with a big engine, as you say, incredibly fragile. Ran in November 20 in a bumper, February 21 in a hurdle, and wasn't seen again till New Year's Day 2022.
Yeah.
He seems to be in good shape. He's came out of Fairy House well, and I'd say it's probably been a tactical move for Willie to mind him, not run him at the Dublin Festival, and go straight to Cheltenham to let him show what, the potential is there. His homework is very good.
Well, I was saying nothing's got near him on the racecourse, has it? That's my point. He's a bit of an unknown in many quantities, isn't he?
Nobody truly knows how good he is, but is that better than Lompress, Galloping Deschamps and Bob Ollinger? That's a serious question to ask, and
no. Probably not. But he's 14 to 1,
know.
so I thought I'd flag him up. I mean, do you think it'd be a 3-miler or 2.5-miler? Any preference on him? Or you won over 2.6, didn't he, or there or thereabouts last time out?
Yeah, he won over that trip in Fairy House. I think with his class, I'd imagine 2.5, 2.5 is probably ideal for him. Maybe in better races in the future, he might start going towards the 3-mile route if he's going to develop into a Gold Cup horse. But who knows? I'd be siding with the shorter priced ones here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the general consensus on the Turners, which it will be an excellent way to kick off proceedings on the Thursday. The Ryanair Chase is the next grade one we're covering. On paper, this is many people's banker of the week. It is Allaho 4-6, a Nergamine, very unlikely runner, you'd have to say, 11-4, along with Aplutard and Chaka Boursois, which then leads you down to Chamblou at 8-1. Then we're 9's Bar. Stephen, to come to you first on this one. This race is going to cut up. Surely Allaho's got to jump, whatever it is, 16 fences, 14 fences to win. He's not only he was amazing last year. Yeah. He's maintained his form. His performance of thumping Fakir Duderi last time out has been well advertised, and I'm trying to find a problem with him, and I'm struggling.
No, I agree. I think this is another one of these horses, a bit like Honeysuckle earlier in the week, and one or two others that we've mentioned. I could just see them going straight through. they've been priced up lazily by the bookmakers. Most of these aren't going to run. They're betting to about 280% at the moment, but because there's 5 or 6, the next 5 in the betting are definitely not going to run. And there isn't really a second in. Shanblue, maybe, not been seen out since taking that heavy fall at Wetherby. I'd be stunned if Shanblue is within a stone of Allaho, to be truthful. I mean, last year at the festival, Allaho was the most impressive winner of the whole week. I've never seen anything like it. It went off absolutely like the clappers, jumped brilliantly and had the race won after a mile. It was a destructive performance. It was good to soft then. I should think it'll be a bit more testing, and that'll probably suit Allaho. I think he'll soon have these in trouble and they won't see him, and I think he'll come home alone. I think he's an absolute... I mean, I think if you can get sort of 5-4 on the exchanges now, you could probably do a lot worse than lock that in. He's the sort of horse who'll end up 2-1 on, putting on the day. The whole world will have him in every multiple, and I'll be very disappointed if he gets beat, to be honest with you.
Well, it's just an interesting viewpoint. Just to find a point on that, Stephen. I mean, from the bookmaker's perspective, Shishkin and Allaho are the same price to win at the Cheltenham Festival. If you took away prices and anything, I would have thought Allaho's chances much better winning the Ryanair's than Shishkin's is of winning the Champion Chase, even though I think Shishkin will win the Champion Chases. Allaho's got nothing to beat here, has he? What's he got to beat Allaho?
I mean, Energumene, they're closely matched, aren't they? There's a length or so between them, and they bet 10 on Energumene at Ascot, so clearly they are quite closely matched. Whereas Allaho has not got a second in. I mean, Shanbleu is Shanbleu. He'd have won by 3 fences at Wetherby. He took a horrible fall. He's not been seen since. He comes here fresh. That's always been the aim, but I couldn't dream him being in the same class. Allaho, of course, do you remember, Ed? Forget about last year's route. The year before, behind Champ, he was the unluckiest loser ever. The whole world was on, and he stumbled at the wrong time, just as he was coming through to win. I think he was desperate, but he's gone the right way in Ireland. He's a tough, bold front runner. And here's the other thing. Cheltenham's slightly different. First of all, Allaho's going to scare them all off. Secondly, they all know Allaho's going to lead, and nothing's going to be driving Allaho mad because they're just going to ruin their own chances. So I think it'll be a soft lead, soon led, jump well, in command halfway. It's a lesser race this year by the look of it than it was last.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would echo those kind of sentiments. Danny, a very uncomplicated horse. To someone obviously who's never had anything to do with Allaho in terms of hands-on. He seemed to just point him at the fences, let him go, and he jumps and he travels. And that's what we saw to maximum effect in this race 12 months ago.
Yeah, he was very good. You know, as you touched on already, the price versus the opposition, he seems real value here. The interesting one, I think, I don't know where he runs, but Asterion Furlonge, he's actually drifting for this race now. But he looked like he was maybe going to give him a race in the John Durkin in Punchestown. And were he to line up in the race, could he be a solid each way bet? You know, over 3 miles, he's looked like he's been always travelling well and tipped up and had his jumping issues, missed a few fences late in Leopardstown the last day, but quiet ride in the Ryanair over 2.5. I think there could be a lot of value at 14-1 to pick up the pieces.
The word solid and Asterion Furlonge in the same sense. It's not something most people would normally associate with those two going together. Vincent, Allaho, it looks his to lose. Do you see a chink in his armour? If so, who's going to exploit it?
There's no real chink. Now, he has got beaten twice in Cheltenham at the festival before, but last year he was awesome. When he came here as a novice, the horse that beat him was Minella Indo, and then he got beaten by Champ, who's a fair yardstick as well. So last season he was brilliant at Cheltenham alone, not necessarily all season long, but this season he's come back and he's looked really good. The John Durkin run looked poor-ish at the time, but the way it's worked out, that race has worked out unbelievably well. And then he came out the last day in Thurles and put Facu Didaris in his place again. A horse he'd beaten 12 lengths in this race last year. He beats him 12 lengths again or whatever in Thurles. So, and then that horse comes out and wins again in the UK since. So everything looks very solid. It's impossible to see anything beating him. But having said that, there's only ever been one odds-on chance in this race before, which was Dassault from the same yard. It had won the race in 2017, came back as an odds-on chance a year later and got stuffed. So that's the only negative I can find. There is no other negative. The horse looks seriously good. The other one, Danny mentioned Asterion Forlange, not for me anywhere ever. The way he jumps, why back a horse who can't jump is the bottom line. There's plenty of other opportunities during the week to back something and take your chance. But I think you're throwing your money away on him personally. Just he lets you down every single day without fail.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I'm going to throw in Eldorado Allen at 14 to each way if he ran into third. I wouldn't be shocked there. I was impressed by the way he improved, stepping up in trip at Newbury last time out. And again, as we've touched upon, this race could easily cut up to a 7-8 runner affair. And I think Allaho will win. And Eldorado Allen could follow him home for a rejuvenated Colin Tizard team. Or Colin, incidentally, in his final season with a licence before he hands the licence over to son Joe. Right, we'll move on to the Stayers Hurdle now, which is a race our special guest Danny Mullins clearly has fond memories of, and hopefully, in his view, we'll have even more memories of. Flooring Porter, your 7-2 market leader to win the feature race on the Thursday. Time held 9-2. Classical Dream 5-1. Champ 11-2. Paisley Park 6s. You're looking at double figures. The rest, Danny, will come to you first. Flooring Porter, obviously 12 months ago, magical scenes. Things haven't, let's be blunt, haven't quite gone to plan so far this season, but he has got the been there and done it factor in the book.
Yeah, definitely. You know, he has his quirks. I thought before tipping up in Navan, he probably would have held on to win that race. Things, he didn't get a clean crack at it in Leopardstown, but I think that Leopardstown form is probably a stronger bit of form than when he won the race last year in Cheltenham. So I think that's a step forward. He's a 7-year-old. He was only 6 when he won it last year. I think he still could be on the way up. And with a clean run round, I think he has a very good chance of retaining his crown here. Classical Dream was good on his comeback to beat him in Leopardstown at Christmas, but flopped badly in Gorn. You know, his Classical's form off a break had been good. He won in Punchestown last year. It'll be a bit of magic from Willie, to come back again. He looks very good in what he's doing at home, but, that it's a big negative for him, that run in Gorn the last day. The English horses, there's probably very little between them. Time Hill, Champ and Paisley Park, they're all closely enough matched on their form, and they've been taking each other on, all decent types. But I'd hope the form of the Leopardstown run at Christmas of Flooring Porter and Classical Dream might be a little bit stronger than that, but it's no foregone conclusion at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, Flooring Porter as a character, what's he like as a horse? He comes across like he's a bit fizzy, he's a bit quirky, he's got his own ideas about the game. Is that true? I mean, is he like that off the course, or is it just he comes alive once he goes down the post type of thing?
He's actually a pet in the stable, and then as soon as you get up on him, he starts to come alive underneath you. But the funny thing is, the more he goes through the season, the better he gets. In Cheltenham last year was probably the best he'd behaved all year, and I've sat in him recently in Fairy House, and he behaved himself perfectly there. Being out and about for those few days away from home seemed to take the gas out of the system, and all going well. I wouldn't have any issues heading to Cheltenham. I have every confidence in the horse, and I think he's a great chance of doing it again.
Interesting stuff, that freshness kind of out of him as the season progresses and allows him to settle. Vincent, we spoke about this on previous shows in regards to Flooring Porter and Classical Dream. I mean, you just had a theory perhaps that race over the Christmas period took a little bit out of both of them. I mean, you could argue to some extent that's shown up to be quite true with what we saw with Classical Dream's flop in the, was it the Galmoy or whichever race it was last time? I mean, are you looking outside these big two then for the winner?
I am particularly, Danny mightn't want to hear this, but I think the two horses at Christmas, they ran their guts out that day. The thing that gets it for me is Flooring Porter had won the same race last year before going on to win the Stayers in Cheltenham. And on similar ground this year against Classical Dream, he ran 33 seconds quicker than he had to win the same race last year. That's a huge amount of time. That's some speed they went for 3 miles around Leopardstown that day. They left all the rest of them out with the washing. He was 20 lengths back to everything else. Half the decent horses in it pulled up. I think that they ran too hard that day, and I think it emptied the pair of them, personally. Now, we haven't seen Flooring Porter since, so I don't know, but we've seen Classical Dream come out in Gorn Park and flop. And I fear for the pair of those horses personally. The other little negative around Flooring Porter for me is Gavin Cromwell's stable form. He's had one winner from his last 94 runners. Like that's disaster coming into Cheltenham for a big stable in Ireland. I know he's a relatively new big stable, but he's one of probably the biggest 4 stables in the country now, national hunt wise. And that's not the form you want coming into it. Having said that, Danny says he rode the horse the other day and it schooled well. You have to go with that. For me, I was fancying an outsider in this. Was the horse that finished second to Flooring Porter last year, which is Sire de Burley. I thought he was being lined up for another tilt at it. He'd started 5-1, I think, in the race last year, and he'd won the Pertemps twice before. So I thought he was going to have a go. But it's interesting now, they've switched him back to the Pertemps. They're going to claim off him in the Pertemps, and the same owner has Champ. So presumably Champ is working well, doing everything right. Champ is possibly the best of the English, and that being the case, I thought I'd take a chance on him rather than the 2 Irish, which I think there's question marks to answer on both of them.
Well, it's fascinating stuff. We've seen from that graphic there, Steve, and we were talking about the JP McManus horses. I thought I was throwing in a mad one here, and we've dovetailed nicely. Sporting John, I don't think he's totally out of this. When you look at ratings, they could, of course, run in the Pertemps off 155, but they've got Side of Burley off 156 in that. I think it's going to be, well, Philip Hobbs said, didn't he, the other day, it's going to be a last-minute decision after a chat to connections to what they do with him. I don't think he's a daft one here at 14-1, and I gather you probably share my view.
No, I agree. I think on form very closely matched. I agree with what Danny said about the English horses. They're all the same horse. Champ, Paisley Park, Sporting John. They've all been beating each other in turn. Sporting John has perhaps got a little bit more upside. He's won 5 from 7 over hurdles. They gave up on chasing. He actually won the big race at Sandown, didn't he, over fences? But that was a farce of a race. He was tailed off, going nowhere, blundering his way around, and they all stopped. So they curtailed chasing. But he's a prolific winner. He was really impressive at Warwick the other day. Now, people look at that and think, well, it was only a handicap. But I don't think there's much between handicaps and these, over these the graded races and staying handicaps. There's pounds between them. It's sort of snobbery to think, well, he's a handicapper. He's not. I think he could be 20-1. I think Hobbs wants to run him against Champ in the Stayers hurdle, but it won't be his decision, of course. I wouldn't imagine it'll be the big cheeses at the green and gold colours decide which runs where. And Champ must be a big runner. I was going to ask Danny what he made of the start the other day in Ireland when Flooring Porter finished second, because it was a ridiculous. The winner got an absolute fly, like sort of greyhound out of trap 1. And the front 2 were sort of 20 lengths clear throughout, an absolutely brutal gallop. What happened at the start that they got such a flyer?
Yeah, the start wasn't ideal for me. One of those things. Joe Vanahan was the starter, and one of those days, yeah.
One of those days. I think we'll draw a line through that. But from Cheltenham is a different day. It's a fascinating contest. Just finally, Stephen, we'll come back to you on Paisley Park. Where are we with Paisley Park? I mean, I'd written him off. I thought this was he was going to be in for a swan song in the trials day at Cheltenham. And I got to admit, I mean, the reception he got I thought, again, he was tailed off. He hit that Cheltenham hill and he flew up it. I mean, if you didn't know he was 10 years of age, you'd be saying he's coming in with a real kind of chance. It's the stats gurus are out to throw it in your face and say he's pretty much got no chance. But I mean, if you take that form on face value, he's got to be in the mix again, hasn't he?
Yeah, I could see him running well, sort of finishing well, sort of 4th or 5th again. It'd be great for racing if he won. Of course, he's got an owner with fantastic story, and Emma Lavell's had a really good season. I'd love to see him win. I think he's a very short price now, based about single figures. Everything panned out ideally when he beat Champ. I would imagine, if you had a match bet, Champ against Paisley Park, and there were only 2 runners, Champ would beat Paisley Park by 5 lengths hard on the bridle, wouldn't he? The race just panned out. Right. Sometimes at Cheltenham they go for home too soon and stop before they hit the hill, and things get dragged in from miles out the back of the TV. Well, that was his day, I think, and he's not getting any younger like the rest of us. So it's a fascinating race. This, I suspect, looking at the market now, it's sort of 3-1. This looks at least 5 or 6-1. The field. I think this is a really hard race. If they all turn up, I don't think there's a standout contender, and this is a race. Vincent saying earlier about races where you get results like the Supreme. I remember a horse winning 100-1, not that, probably a decade ago now. This is a race that can throw up a right turn up.
Well, dude, this Nagat Oscar was a 50-1
Yeah.
SP winner, wasn't he? Only 2 or 3 seasons ago. Yeah, can get absolute carnage in this contest. Looking at the rest of the card, and coming to you first, Danny. Just a horse or mare I'd like to flag up here. I thought there might be a chance you end up riding her in the mare's novices. That's a Statuaire, of course. She won the Royal Bond in really good style. Things didn't quite work out last time out when well beaten behind Sir Gerhard. I mean, what can you tell us about her?
Yeah, Statuaire, she was very good in Fairy House winning the Royal Bond, and that form was boosted by Mighty Potter going on to win a Grade 1 after it. The last day behind Sir Gerard, it was just too bad to be true. She had the first time hood on that day. Whether that will be left on her, I'm not quite sure. You know, she's the one that gets slightly worked up sometimes beforehand. Right. So, you know, in Cheltenham, it'll be just key to keep her switched off before the race as well. I still think Willie has got a fair handle on this race, even with the loss of Aligor de Vassy. Brandy Love back going left-handed. It'll definitely be a big advantage to her. She thrown away the race in Fairy House the last day with that jumping. And Dino Blue is the one I think is most likely winner of it. She was very impressive in Clonmel the last day, and I think is a mare with bags of potential.
Yes, fascinating stuff. Another horse you potentially could run on the Thursday as well, maybe in the Kim Muir. Danny, I don't know if you know Mr. Fogpatches. Gather a horse you know well and is trained just up the road from you.
Yeah, Pat Fahey's horse, Mr. Fogpatches. I've ridden him plenty. I was second on him actually at Cheltenham early in December. Had a good run over there. Backed that up with a third in the Thyestes Chase, a very competitive handicap the last day. And I think, yeah, he'd have a big chance. The only thing for him is he likes a bit of decent ground. He wouldn't want it too soft, but hopefully by later in the week, the ground might have dried out a bit again if that rain arrives. I'm not sure who rides him in the race yet. There could be a possibility of having Patrick Mullins on board, which would be a big plus. I don't know if Patrick has a ride in the race yet. And as like with the conditional race, the amateur races, I think you have to start with, you know, your handful of top amateurs. They're a big advantage in those races. Were Patrick to be on him, I think that would be a serious plus for Mr. Pogpatches.
Right, that's fascinating stuff. Yeah, keep your eyes out then for that individual in the Kim Muir, of course, on the Thursday. Vincent, we'll come to you then. Anything else you like the look of? And let's have your best bet for the Thursday card.
Well, the basic thing here is that I would agree with Danny on Mr. Fogpatches. That is a big chance in the Kim Muir. The Thyestes run was very good. That was a cracking run. He had every chance up the straight. It was only after the last that he finally gave in. He's danced most dances and not won them in the last 12 months or so, and he's due a big one. And as you say, if Patrick Mullins was riding him, I'd be very keen. Another horse in the Paddy Power Plate that Danny probably knows something about is the Shunter, presuming that this is the race he goes for. He was back from 11-2 into 9-4 to win this race last year. He was also second to Protector at an Aintree, fourth in the Galway Plate. He's a nice horse, that the Shunter, if he's ready and willing and ready to go here. Any news on him, Danny?
Yeah, he unseated in Leopardstown the last day, and you know, while he won a handicap in Cheltenham last year, his jumping in Aintree and that run behind Protectorat, it just wasn't good enough when he came under real pressure. Maybe he was a handicap blot in Cheltenham last year. He got £13 for it, and you know, even in the Galway Plate, he just made a few mistakes as well. I think off that revised mark, might just be under a little bit of pressure.
Fair enough, yeah. Another one that I do like is in the Pertemps. There's a horse that Gordon Elliott has called Dunboyne. That was a real eye catcher when never nearer fifth in one of the qualifiers at Leopardstown. And then he's since run at the Dublin Racing Festival. He was going well in a big field again when made a bad mistake at the second last. And that was the end of that performance. But I think he's one to watch out for in the Pertemps. He'd be one of my keen ones there.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Stephen, coming to you. Thursday, handicap excitement and best bet on the card.
Yeah, best bet on the card, I think, is Allaho Unoriginal. The one I thought is interesting in the Pertemps is Brawson, who's about 33, will be a lot bigger on the exchanges. He's currently about 42 on the list, so I'm hopefully he'll get in. Not certain, maybe not. But these days it doesn't matter non-run and no bet. On the cusp, yeah. He's basically got untapped potential as his stamina's drawn out. Now, he got beat last time at Musselburgh, 9-4 favourite. There was a Charles Burns plot in the race called the Big Galloper that Burns sent the men in to Musselburgh in cash, and they relieved the betting ring of about 50 grand, I'm told. And that was an absolute last-minute job that avoided the exchanges. I think he was still 9 or 10 on the exchanges, returned 15-2, something like that. Absolutely dotted up. Anyway, that's a long way of getting to Brawson, who was tapped around Musselburgh under a pretty negative ride, finished with running left in him. He's only had a few runs over this kind of trip. You know, the Patempts, again, you need to stay probably another half a mile further than the actual trip. They get racing a long, long way out. And Brawson has got loads more to come. Trained by a small trainer, Martin Kiddie, who trains around the corner from you in your back garden. I think he'll run really well. We always say this on Jump to It. Find a bookmaker, especially in the races like the Patempts. 4 places is not enough. It's very unfriendly as a punter with all these huge fields. Bookmakers will be offering 6, 7, maybe even 8 places. Shop around, and I'm going to back Brawson each way at about 33-1 if he gets in the race.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Yeah, Marty Keith, he was pretty bullish on his chances at the Cheltenham Weights Day the other day. He said if he can get in, he does need 18 or so to come out with. So keep your eyes on him. I'm going for an absolute Hail Mary here. A stolen silver for the informed Sam Thomas team in the plate. I really like that horse's claims. I think he'll run a huge race. And I'm going to keep my eyes on Danny and his mare Statuaire if he's on board, because listening to Danny's insight there, if she goes to post and she's calm, and Danny can do his job properly and keep a lid on her, then she'd definitely be carrying my money. Because that Royal Bomb form, no exaggeration, that is she's overpriced at 10-1 if she can replicate that form. And obviously, depending on how Mighty Potter gets on the Supreme, of course, I suppose earlier in the week will affect her price considerably. So lots of fascinating input there. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Stay tuned. We'll move on to Gold Cup Day.